So welcome all to the Licenses Subcommittee for the Fredwell Bistro in Llanwyd Major. I would just like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and that recording will be archived for future viewing. Please could all participants mute themselves when not speaking, and when invited to speak by the chair, please ensure that your microphone and camera is on when addressing the committee. If at any point any participant is having difficulty hearing or being heard, please could you bring this to the attention of the chair or myself as Democratic Officer via the chat function. So to briefly outline the order for proceedings for the subcommittee, the order is outlined in the papers at Appendix A to the subcommittee procedure. We will begin by the appointment of chair. Then we will ask the licence officer to present the report, and then we'll ask the applicant, Mr. Birch, to present their case. Then we will hear from any responsible authorities, and then following that, we will hear from interested parties. And I believe we had 4 on the call today, and we'll ask if any of them would like to address the committee. And then finally, we will hear summing up from all parties. We'll have a final closing statement from the applicant, Mr. Birch. So if I can begin by asking the 3 subcommittee members if I can have a nomination for the position of chair. Thank you. Hello?
Can you hear?
Yeah. Anyone would like to be chair today?
I nominate Pamela Drake.
I'll second that. Councillor Drake.
Okay,
Right,
Councillor Drake, I'll hand over the chair to you then. Thank you.
Sorry about a bit of the delay then. I would ask members, have you any declarations of interest?
Just me, I'd only mention that because I practice as a solicitor in Llanwyd Major, I am acquainted with some of the people who are objecting, but that does not colour my judgment of this matter in any way. But I thought I should mention that.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. I would like to introduce the committee. Myself, I'm Councillor Pamela Drake.
I'm Councillor Howard Hamilton.
I'm Councillor Michael Morgan.
Right, thank you very much. Welcome to everybody. And I believe Gareth has gone through the proceedings with everybody and who will be speaking. I can't remember, but Gareth has got the list who's going to be speaking anyway. Right, thank you very much. Right, moving on to step 4, which is the licensing officer is going to outline the application. So I'll hand it over to Yvonne Witchell.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. As the Chair has said, I'm just going to briefly run through the bundle of papers and appendices that we have for consideration this morning. I'm not aware of any additional submissions or any written information that's been submitted for the committee. So it is the report that has been sent out to everyone. So as the Chair says, this is an application for the grant of a premises licence at Fredwell Bistro, 4 Wine Street, Llanwyd Major. It's been submitted by Mr. Christopher Birch of Fredwell Cafe and Patisserie Limited. And the reason for the hearing of the subcommittee today is that there are representations that haven't been withdrawn, and therefore a full hearing of this application is required. The application itself was received on the 13th of December 2022, and a copy of the relevant parts of the application form is attached at Appendix A to the report. And the application seeks the authorisation for the licensable activity of the sale by retail of alcohol on the premises only. And there are no non-standard or seasonal timings applied for within the application. We've included a brief explanation that whilst the application included a request for permission to provide recorded music, this isn't required because subsequent to the Licensing Act coming into force, certain activities were deregulated between the hours of 8 AM and 11 p.m. and recorded music is one of those, and it's not licensable on premises which are licensed to sell alcohol. Likewise, the request for the provision of late night refreshment contained in the application is superfluous, as that activity is only licensable between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. and this application seeks authorisation between 9:30 and 2200 hours each day. The application included an operating schedule which set out the steps the applicant proposed to take to promote the licensing objectives, and that's set out in box M of the application. As required, the application is sent to a number of statutory agencies, including South Wales Police, the Planning Authority and Environmental Health. There are no representations from those agencies. However, the planning department supplied a copy of the current planning permission for the premises, highlighting a number of restrictions in place. However, any applicant is entitled to apply for a premises licence prior to submitting a planning application or vice versa, and for both to be considered on their merits. As part of the consultation process, the licensing authority was notified that the South Wales Police had made a number of recommendations in relation to additional conditions should the licence be granted, and a copy of those recommendations is attached at Appendix B of the report. And that is in the form of conditions of licence to which the applicant has agreed. The application was also advertised in accordance with the regulations, and a number of residents have submitted representations, and these are summarised at Appendix C of the report. And in terms of the Licensing Act, the authority is only empowered to consider relevant representations as defined in the Act, that is, representations which are about the likely effect of the grant of the premises licence on the promotion of the licensing objectives. And the process followed for submitting those representations has been done in accordance with Section 182 guidance issued by the Home Office to the licensing authority. As I explained, none of the residents have withdrawn their representations, and therefore the report is as before you members. So unless there are any technical questions on the application, that is the report before you.
Does anybody want to raise any issues with Yvonne? Councillor Morgan?
Just to clarify, am I correct that the planning application you referred to is the one dated 1st of May 2014, that there's not been any subsequent variation of that?
I don't have the details, as the actual notification from planning was by way of information only and not a representation to be included in the meeting.
No other further comments or questions? No, I can't see anything. Right, I would now like to invite the applicant, which I presume is Mr. Christopher Birch, to give his presentation.
Good morning. Thank you very much for meeting today. My plan here I'm in Fredwell in Llantwit Major at the moment, is to open this as a predominantly coffee shop, which it is at the moment, with the ability to be able to have a glass of wine with your meal instead of a coffee. Not everybody wants a coffee, not everybody wants a tea. Some people will want a glass of wine with their meal, and that's what I'm endeavouring to sort of create here. We've had relative success. We have another 2 venues and another one opening later this month. The one at Pantwilkin Stables is 65 seats. We went to a subcommittee hearing for that too, for the objections there. That was overcome, and there's been no issues with that. And pretty much the predominant reason for that is that we are quite small. This building is even smaller. This caters for no more than 25 people at any one time, and is predominantly aimed at a higher end clientele, higher end market. And basically, pretty much the reason for coming here is, if you don't want to go to a pub, if you don't want to go to somewhere and have people who are sort of loud and loutish sort of around you, but you do want a glass of wine and you want to socialize with people, that you can do that in somewhere that's relatively relaxed and chilled, and somewhere that's maybe aimed at a slightly older market at the same time. We have my partner and I, we based this entire design from French-themed bistros. We have a farm in France, and this is pretty much catered to that same way of thinking, where you can get up in the morning, you can go and have your breakfast, and then sit around people who are also having a glass of wine, and it doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter. And that's pretty much my reasoning here. We are very, very happy to go along with the 3-drink maximum. And if I'm completely honest with you, if you wanted to get drunk in Llantwit Major, I could throw a stone and hit 3 pubs here. We are not that kind of establishment, and we won't be that kind of establishment. You're not going to come here to get drunk, essentially. You come here to have something to eat and possibly have a glass of wine at the same time as your friends are having perhaps a coffee. And that's my complete reasoning here. I mean, I completely take on board the points of residents. I do wish that in some way people had come in and perhaps had a chat. I am here every Monday. That would have been fantastic. We could have perhaps overcome quite a lot of things, but that's absolutely fine. I understand that. But the whole premise of this is not for people to come here and get drunk. And we certainly won't be adding anything to the people who are already drinking in the area and this, that, and the other. We have a very relaxed sort of atmosphere, but we are priced at the higher end as well. So I think you'd find it very difficult to get drunk here. But that aside, it's a lovely venue, and we would love to add wine to our menu, and that's pretty much all I can add to it at this time. I'm happy to hear, obviously, from everybody else, and then I can comment further towards the end if that's okay with you all.
Well, thank you for that. I noticed you were going to have a 3-drink limit.
That's right,
That
yes.
3 bottles of wine, will it?
Say again, sorry.
That won't be 3 bottles of wine per person, will it? When you
well,
say
if you want to, no, I'm joking. No, I don't think so.
I shouldn't laugh, but yeah.
No, I saw your eyes light up. No, I'm joking. No, no, it would be 3 glasses of wine. Yes, we South Wales Police came to us and suggested that we should have a 3-drink maximum, which of course we're very happy to. So in order to facilitate that, we've added a tab system here where you'd be able to monitor, remember, any customer sat in a chair, so you would know how many drinks they're having. But to be perfectly honest with you, to my left is the bar, to my right is the front door. You can see absolutely everybody in here, and it's not the kind of place that where you may miss somebody having 11 drinks in the corner or something stupid. It's somewhere you would clearly see everybody, and you would know if there was an issue.
Mm. And you would like to promote local produced alcohol as well, wouldn't you?
Yes, definitely. We at the moment we work closely with Glynnock Vineyard and Lanark Vineyard. I never pronounce them right. And we also work with a company called Bang On Brewery, which are in Bridgend. And Jack and I also have shares in a vineyard in France as well. So everything would be produced and grown either locally or by that vineyard there. So everything is as local as we can get it, but we do that with our food, so it makes sense to do it with our drinks as well.
All right, thank you. Does any other member want to ask Mr. Birch any questions? Did I see your hand go up, Councillor Morgan?
Yes, it is. No, it's just picking up on the question I asked Yvonne about the planning consent. I'm assuming that the most recent consent is one from 2014, which restricts the opening hours of the premises to up until 5 o'clock each day, from 8 till 5 o'clock each day, and from 8 until 2 on Sundays. Is it your intention to make a planning application to vary those hours?
At the moment, sir, not initially. We have spoken to the planning department a few times on this, and the trade at the moment in this building is relatively quiet. I'm the only person in here at the moment, and it's open. So we wouldn't look to be extending those hours at the moment. The reason we put the licensing application in is if things do get busier, that we'd like to not have to go through a licensing application as well as a planning application in the future. So it made sense to tick every box as we go along.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay, Mr. Councillor Morgan, is that okay for you?
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody else wish to raise any questions with Mr. Birch?
No, thank you, Pam.
Right, okay. Am I allowed to ask for some of the people who have come along today to whether they want to ask questions to Mr. Birch? Richard, I can't hear you.
Apologies. Chair, there are no representations from other responsible authorities, so it now moves to other persons to make their representations. So provided they've already made a representation, they can expand upon what they want to say. They're not in a position to introduce any matters which have not already been subject to their representations.
That's fine. Thank you very much. We move on to step 6 now, responsible authorities. I don't believe there's anybody here today. Is that correct, Yvonne? We just got a report from the police authority. There's nobody.
There are no, sorry, Chair, there are no representations from any of the responsible authorities, as Mr. Birch has agreed to the recommendations made by South Wales Police, so there is no need for a hearing of those representations.
Right, thank you very much. Now I would like to invite the interested party to speak and bring forward witnesses to their case who can be questioned in turn by other parties. So I don't know who's going to go first.
Chair, can I suggest an order, because we did have requests come in. So can we start with I think it's Jane Cook. Can Jane Cook go first?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And thank you, members, for this opportunity to just expand on my objections. I'm objecting to this current licence application as a resident of Wine Street, and in fact, our house actually adjoins the premises themselves. So I'm sitting next door to Chris Birch at the moment. My representations relate to the proposed licensable activity, and I'm very aware that the licensing authority has very strict parameters under which to consider the licensing applications. So I'll be very careful to make sure that my objections relate to the 4 strands of licensing, particularly in relation to the prevention of public nuisance and also public safety. Just as a quick aside, I'd note that the Home Office Guidance 2018 was revised and relates directly to the Licensing Act 2003. And actually that says that the applicant should provide sufficient evidence to demonstrate that they understand, amongst other things, the proximity to residential premises and consequently the impact. And it would appear, having reviewed the licence application, that this hasn't been the case. And that's, to me, rather disappointing, given that this is a wholly residential street. But obviously members will be able to see the paperwork in front of them for themselves. So just turning to the prevention of public nuisance, obviously members will be aware that this length of Wine Street is wholly residential. We are a supportive and considerate community living on a very narrow street. And the introduction of a nighttime alcohol licensed premises will cause noise nuisance due to the comings and goings of patrons, taxis waiting in the street, People waiting for lifts, the music, people smoking in the street, and all the usual activity associated with a licensed premises. Completely hear what Chris Birch says about his proposed clientele, but at the end of the day, a licensed premises is a licensed premises and does come with all those associated noise and disturbances that we all expect. People are, as we all know, very different on a night out than they are having a coffee and a cake in the day. When drinking, possibly having food and a good time, hopefully, we're different, we're noisier. But this is a narrow residential street where such licensable activity really is simply unacceptable. Members who are familiar with the premises will know that the frontage is almost entirely glass and doesn't provide any significant noise insulation. There's no internal lobby, so each time the doors open, noise would spill out onto the street and into our homes. The current low-key cafe operation, as Councillor Morgan has indicated, has a 5 p.m. weekday closing, 2 o'clock closing on Saturdays, but no opening on Sundays at all. It does create some comings and goings, but it's very low-key. It's reasonable. A full-blown bar, restaurant, bistro, as has been described, is a completely different proposition and is really unacceptable in this location, so closely surrounded by our homes. My house particularly shares a wall with the premises. Noise is audible during the day on occasion, even with this low-key cafe use, but it's in the daytime and Saturday mornings only, and it's just generated by people having a coffee and a snack. But with the introduction of alcohol in the evening and nighttime, the operation becomes different. It's going to be noisier. There's no soundproofing, and this is a significant worry. So as I've said, the premises joins our house directly on one side, but it's also joined onto residential properties both above and also on the other side. The rear of the property does have a door which leads directly onto a residential garden, but I understand there's no access there, although I'd be happy to be put right about that, but I understand there's no access there. The premises is set directly onto a very, very narrow pavement. It's definitely substandard. It's probably, in old money, it's probably about 18 inches maximum at that point. And it's a pinch point on Wine Street as well. And there's a residential property directly opposite and also obliquely opposite. So it's a particularly narrow point on the street. And in fact, residential properties surround number 4 Wine Street. So I'm sure members will appreciate that having a daytime cup of coffee and a snack is a different activity than going out for a drink at night or drinking food, celebrations, parties, birthdays, etc., which, you know, that's how licensed premises work. The atmosphere after consuming alcohol, as people naturally become less inhibited, it's louder, both inside and outside venues, and that would cause public nuisance in this residential street. I hear what Chris Birch has said about a 3-drink limit. I've never been anywhere out for the evening with a 3-drink limit, and I would question how enforceable that would be, and how, as a business, how that is a sensible prospect. You may want to spend a full evening there and have something nice to eat, and 3 drinks probably for many people wouldn't be something that they'd be happy to be limited to. I also note there's no provision for any sort of extraction facilities, and obviously we've heard about the local produce, local wines, and etc. But obviously it's a very small premises, and that's got to be prepared and cooked somewhere. There's no provision for extraction facilities, and to be honest, there's no scope for them to be installed due to the strange configuration of the premises. So cooking smells would also be likely to cause public nuisance. The Planning Permission has been mentioned, and I completely understand that Planning Permission is dealt with under different legislation. However, I do think it's very relevant for members to be aware that when granting planning permission for the cafe in 2014, the council in its report made it very, very clear that this site is not appropriate for any other cafe or restaurant use other than the very low marquee coffee shop with daytime only opening. And this was due to the residential nature of the area and thus the high potential for public nuisance. Clearly, the prevention of public nuisance is a key issue for licensing to consider, and I would urge members that the identification of public nuisance for this residential area was very clearly set out as a reason for the very, very limited 2014 planning permission, and is clearly evidence that would support my objection, that of other residents, and the potential for members to hopefully refuse this current licence application. So in addition to public safety, in addition to public nuisance, public safety is also a concern. This low-key cafe operation currently means that there's very low-key servicing, but a bistro opening 7 days a week, daytime, evening, nighttime, serving alcohol and full meals, it's going to have a significant servicing requirement involving deliveries, waste collections, potentially blocking this very narrow street. As I said, it's particularly narrow Wine Street at this point, with a very substandard pavement on just one side, but there's also significant pedestrian movement up and down the street, and it's heavily used by residents for parking along the street as well. There's no facility for waste storage and removal at the premises. There's no rear access, which I'm sure Mr. Birch would confirm. And the operation of a licensed premises would give rise to significant waste, particularly glass waste. And with no accommodation for this, it would be out on this narrow street, which would potentially have an unacceptable impact on public safety. I note that the applicant had applied for late night refreshment, and I know your licensing officer has outlined the issue there. But I would say that in the unfortunate scenario that the licence is granted, I think it would need to be made very clear that late night refreshment would be excluded, and also that the timings would be restricted. So I would request members, if unfortunately you did decide to grant this application, that it be further restricted. I would note Mr. Birch said it's a shame that the residents hadn't been to see him. He's there every Monday morning. And I would really say that we are established residents in the street. As somebody wanting to open a business, I think it's a great shame Mr. Birch hasn't actually made the effort to make contact and to discuss with residents his proposal. I think that's really very unfortunate, and I would say that the applicant seems to have little regard for us as residents and little regard for the council, given that number 4 Wine Street's been operating in contravention of the 2014 planning permission. A planning enforcement case, which is on the council's public register for planning, an enforcement case was opened in October last year. And the applicant has still not submitted a planning application to regularise this position. I am aware that a resident...
Chair, can I just interject at this point? We can't move into discussions in a public forum of any potential enforcement action that may be taken by planning in due course. They're not matters for this committee.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, and I completely appreciate that. I was simply reiterating what is a matter of public record on the council's website, but I completely understand that we can't stray into that. I would also note that one of the residents of Wine Street did actually approach Chris Birch fairly early on, and the applicant's response at that stage, I understand, was at best dismissive. I'll leave it at that. I'd also note that there are other premises. I think Mr. Birch referred to the Pant Wilkins site, which is had also been operating in breach of planning, although again the council's public record.
I'm sorry, I must object there. I'm sorry, Chair, but again, planning.
Yeah.
Can I just simply say what is a matter of public record, that there is currently a retrospective planning.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chair. Planning has no force here. And
again, Chair,
sorry,
it's also
I don't own the building.
It's in reference to a completely different premises that we're here to consider. So there's prejudicial. So you need to limit it to your objections that you've put forward, please, and merely expand upon those which relate to the licensing objectives.
Absolutely. I apologise, Chair, if I've brought in something that you're obviously not able to have any jurisdiction over.
No.
So I'll set those issues aside and simply, really, in summary, say very much appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I hope that members can take on board our concerns. To reiterate, this is a narrow residential street, residential for its length, and I consider that matters of public nuisance and potentially public safety would arise if members grant the licence. Very much appreciate your time, and thank you for letting me address you today.
Thank you. Do any other parties wish to raise anything with, is it Jane Cook?
Yeah, Jane's just spoken, Chair. So can I ask John Dudley if he wishes to speak?
Can I just clarify, first of all, that the applicant doesn't want to put any questions to Ms. Cook?
Yeah.
I have no questions. I can rebut some of the points if you'd like.
No, not at this stage. If you had any questions, you could put questions, but you'll be able to sum it up at the end, where you'll be able to address anything that's been said in evidence today.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. Raise anything? Do we move on to the next person? I don't know who that would be. Perhaps
Mr. Simon Randall?
No, I've got nothing else to add. Thank you.
Okay, and then Diana Ashworth.
I have nothing else to add. I do think that I'm not happy about the fact that we didn't approach Mr. Birch. I think it was for Mr. Birch to approach us as neighbours, and that would have been welcome had he done so. No further comments otherwise.
Thank you. Did Mr. Dudley wish to speak?
Yes, please.
Right, I'll hand over to you then.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm glad Jane Cook went first, because she was very distinct and to the point, and I actually agree with everything that she said. There are a couple of points I'd like to make, though. Mr. Birch raised the issue of the 3 local pubs. I'd just point out that those are very old stone buildings with thick walls and small windows, whereas the premises at 4 Wine Street is just all front and the glass, and the only windows of the building are onto the street. I actually live directly opposite the cafe, and already when the cafe is busy and the windows are open, the noise is there anyway. It's quite disturbing. It's not a problem during the day so much, but it's the evening that I'm worried about. I think the noise, the public nuisance of the noise, will be quite intense. I also, just to emphasise a point that Mrs. Cook made, the deliveries will be a major problem here. Usually residents' cars are parked outside the cafe, and delivery vans being what they are, they just stop in the street. At the moment, I think all the ingredients for the cafe come in from a private car and just carried in. But if it becomes a bistro, a licensed bistro, then the alcohol deliveries and the food deliveries will all come in different vans, and that's a problem for the street. And as Ms. Cook mentioned, the waste, I think, will be a serious issue. There's nowhere for the waste to be left outside, and I don't know how they will actually handle that. So that's that one. And again, just to emphasise, Mr. Birch made a point of saying this would be a relaxed atmosphere with food and wine, but currently under the planning permission, he can't cook any food. So if he doesn't make a new application, he can't actually deliver the environment that he's talked about, because no food is available. And I do hear what Mr. Birch says, but also The license application is for selling alcohol until 10 o'clock in the evening. You know, that's what the license application is for, and that's what I really think would create a public nuisance in what is a residential street. I think those are the other points that I wanted to make, other than to say to endorse everything that Mrs. Cook said. Oh, sorry, I have one final point. I didn't realise until I saw the agenda that the police had asked for CCTV within the cafe and also on the entrance and exit. I think there may be a technical issue there, because any camera that is mounted on the premises to pick up the entrance would pick up my house. I don't see how it could avoid picking up my house as well. And I wouldn't be happy with that at all. So I think there's a technical issue there in providing effective CCTV coverage of the entrance.
Mr. Dudley, perhaps I can assist there. The operation of CCTV would have to be to the standards accepted by South Wales Police. So they would have to ensure that there were no privacy issues in relation to the operation of that CCTV. So I hope that gives you some well, less concern in terms of the operation of that, because it has to be done to police standards. And you may be aware that obviously CCTV can cover a street, but obviously it can't intrude into somebody's private residence.
Thank you for that. I hear what you say, but I'm looking here at my window, which is directly opposite where the door is. So the camera is mounted on that building, pointing at the entrance. It's going to pick up my house. I don't see any other way that can be done. So I think there is a technical issue there in providing the CCTV they've asked for.
Right.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to make any comments or raise any issues that Mr. Dudley has brought up? No, I can't see anybody. I'm looking at my screen now. I can't see any hands raised. No. Okay. Right. Now, I think we can move on now, and the applicant can make a closing statement.
Thank you. I just wanted to raise or address some of the points, just to alleviate anything. So first of all, by Ms. Cook there, most definitely the upstairs property raised no objections. The lady who owned the upstairs property also owns this building, and raised no objections whatsoever. Elaine there, she's lovely. I understand the sensible prospect of a 3-drink limit and how we would enforce that. I think I covered that earlier. Restaurant extraction, at the moment, yes, both Mr. Dudley and Ms. Cook are quite correct. There is no, the planning is limited here when it comes to the amount that can be cooked and because of the extraction. Obviously, that would be something that I'm aware of, and it is outside the scope of this this license meeting. Waste collection, I do completely understand that it's a narrow street. That's pretty much why I like this premises, because it's quite quirky and quite unique. It's at the moment, waste extraction, it is taken at the moment by Vale of Glamorgan Council for Mr. Dudley's home straight across the road. So I'd imagine the same impact would be made. It's a similar thing. I mean, Vale of Glamorgan went past just now, so it's a very similar thing in terms of waste collection. At the moment, a private company does it for us. At the moment, again, with the waste, there is storage to the rear for waste, and it's secured and completely in line with Vale of Glamorgan policies there for environmental health. The enforcement case against the premises was completely in error. Just as a side here, on the tenancy or the lease agreement for the building, it does say operational within 7 days a week within the so many hours. It was a mistype, and Elaine apologized, who was the owner of the building, immediately, and we've not opened since that Sunday, so the enforcement action was closed. That's the end of that there. With Diana, sorry, Diana, I didn't catch your surname. I would, when it comes to approaching people in the local community, me personally, I would be really on board with a small independent company coming to the area, and so the idea of so many people objecting to a licensable sort of application here. I wouldn't know who would be unhappy in order to approach them, but obviously that's why we put the notice out. So feel free, you always come in. Please do come in. I'm always happy to have a chat. Mr. Dudley across the road, I can probably wave to you from here. When it comes to noise, ultimately, we're a very small venue. I more than totally accept that. At the moment, there are 2 police officers in here. They're not causing any noise at all. Delivery, it's the same as when the waste being collected. It's very minimal. Any deliveries that go on with food or alcohol or anything like that at the moment, they would all happen within daytime operating hours, when if this was a house, I could bring my shopping in, I could clank my wine glasses in, I could do whatever I needed to within the day. It would be a very similar sort of prospect. If you can appreciate, storage is very minimal here, so the delivery would be equally as small. And then just when it comes to cooking food, I made that point there. CCTV, just so you're aware, Mr. Dudley, please, on a separate level, please do pop over. We've always had CCTV here since we've opened. It's at the very, very rear of the building, which covers the till and the door. But because of the light coming into the building, you actually can't see anything beyond the door at the moment. So it's pretty good, and I would be very happy to share that with you, so you had some sort of confirmation of that. And I think that's everything. But I'm happy to take any other points.
Right. Do any of the subcommittee members wish to raise any points?
No, thank you, Chair.
No.
No.
Councillor Morgan.
I'm still harking back to the planning issue. If your application for licensing was amended and limited to closing at 5 o'clock, is that something that you would pursue or accept?
So if the residents, if it would make the residents happier with that, then most certainly I would be happy with that.
Thank you. Right. Oh, excuse me. Right, I don't think there's anything else that members want to raise. So the next step then is we retire as a subcommittee.
Unfortunately, Chair, that's raised a point. If the applicant is now formally seeking to amend the hours as applied for, that needs to be clarified. But it is for this applicant to make the application as he sees fit. And as has been pointed out, if it's non-compliant with the planning restrictions, it would be a matter for planning enforcement, because as the applicant explained when opening his application, it wasn't his intention to operate without being compliant with the planning restrictions. So he needs to be sure that if he wants to amend the application that's currently before us, that we're all clear about that.
So I don't wish to change the application that's in at the moment. However, if in deliberation you determine that you have to change things, I would be very accepting of that. However, my application would remain as it is.
It can't work that way. We have to consider the application that is before us, and that is why I'm asking you to clarify if you seek to amend your application. We as a committee are not going to do that.
Yeah, and then no, I don't know.
So we're going to consider the application as it stands at the moment? Yes,
unless there's an amendment to it, and Mr. Birch is saying there isn't, so that's fine.
That's right. It would stay as it is, councillor, and the planning application that it currently stands says that we have to close at, I believe, 5:30 weekdays and close at 2 on weekends, I believe, something like that.
Right, thank you. Right, then that's the end of the business at the moment. So we'll retire now. So I expect everybody else to leave the, turn their cameras off and turn their sounds off, please.